All right, I see some of you joining here. We're just going to give this another minute or so here before we get started to let people join. All right, thanks everybody. We're just going to give people just a couple more, maybe 30 seconds or so for a few more people to join, and then we're going to get started. Okay, great. I think we'll get started now. Thanks so much for taking time out of your busy day to join us here. My name is Will Dials. I'm with Pivot Hearing, and today we're going to talk about current economic conditions, specifically what a recession is, whether we're in one right now, and where we might be headed. We're also going to talk about some of the impacts that all this can have on your practice and what you can do best to prepare for what's to come, given a lot of uncertainties that we face. A little bit of housekeeping. We're going to leave some time at the end of the presentation today for questions. So feel free to drop any questions in the Q&A box at the bottom of your Zoom interface at any point during the presentation, and we'll make sure to leave some time at the end to get into those. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Chelsea Treseder from our team to go over all of this in more detail.
Okay, great. Thanks, Will. All right, to get started, I thought we would review exactly what a recession is. Historically, a technical recession has been defined as 2 consecutive quarters of negative GDP growth. We're still waiting for final Q2 2022 GDP results, which are expected in the next week or so. So it'll be interesting to see what shakes out there. But recently, the National Bureau of Economic Research actually changed the official definition of a recession to something that's a bit more vague than what we've used historically. The new definition is a significant decline in economic activity spread across the economy lasting more than a few months, normally visible in real GDP, real income, employment, industrial production, and wholesale retail sales. Obviously, that's less objective than the older definition. So according to that definition, you could argue we may or may not be in a recession at this time. It's also worth noting that what's called a technical recession, the 2 quarters of negative GDP growth we mentioned, and also a real recession, where that kind of significant negative GDP growth is also accompanied by a significant rise in the unemployment rate. That we have yet to see, as the June jobs report showed an essentially 50-year low in unemployment. Although at the same time, labor participation rates are relatively low. So we're just going to have to see how all of this shakes out in the coming weeks and months. So are we in a recession now? Technically, according to the historical definition, maybe. We'll find out next week. But either way, it's probably not a real recession yet. Economists are mixed on when a recession will be declared, but most think it is coming. If not this year, then in 2023 or 2024. And that's because inflation is at a 40-year high, interest rates are rising, economic activity is shaky, and markets are volatile. The Fed is trying to find a way to curb inflation without triggering a recession so that we can have, a mild recession or a soft landing. Economist predictions vary wildly. Some say, just a remote chance of recession in the next 2 years. Others say, a hard downturn is inevitable. I will say predictions for a recession are increasing, and that's based on downgraded GDP growth expectations and the recent increased Fed response to inflation. So if we move out of the economy more generally and we look at our industry specifically, what has the hearing aid market looked like lately? Overall, things look great. Hearing aid sales have rebounded nice and quickly from the pandemic, continuously improving now for more than a year. In 2021, unit sales increased by 37% over 2020, and were even 12% over 2019 sales. Although 2021 represented a big rebound in sales, it appears that pent-up demand was and likely still remains a factor. It's kind of like half of 2020 sales were just kind of sandwiched into 2021. Or said another way, purchases were just delayed. Given the growth rates that we've seen in hearing aid sales over the last 15 years, some estimate that at the start of 2022, there was probably still a deficit of around 600 to 900,000 hearing aids that were not sold during the pandemic, with those units split equally between the private sector and the VA. So that may help to explain the continued strong gains we've seen in the market to date in 2022. So at least so far, the war in Ukraine, the downturn in the stock market, increasing global inflation, all these things that we're reading in the headlines every morning do not appear to have diminished consumers' desires to purchase hearing aids. So most experts so far predict relatively strong sales to continue through most of 2022. So to help contextualize our recent market performance, let's take a look at how the industry has performed during other market downturns. During the fallout from the dot-com boom, the US hearing aid market witnessed only a 0.1% decline in 2001 and a 1.3% decline in 2002. In 2008, during the Great Recession, you'll see a very minor drop in unit sales in 2008. I mean, the recession basically had no effect. And of course, if we look at 2020, that drop off was due to COVID clinic closures rather than some kind of fundamental decrease in demand. And like we just said, we've seen those units move through the market in 2021 and 2022. So, the hearing aid industry has historically been fortunate in its resistance to economic downturns. And on the flip side, it's always been somewhat slow to prosper from the boom times. Okay. So what are the potential business impacts of an impending recession or even just a softening or a mild downturn? We've seen historically that hearing aids are generally somewhat recession resistant, especially compared to other more elective healthcare items or consumer goods and services. Even still, we are likely to experience somewhat of a downturn or softening. Cost of goods, labor, other operational costs might stabilize soon, or they could continue to increase. We just don't know. Another thing to think about is our target, our customers, right? So our customer base, a lot of times live on fixed incomes, so they could be particularly vulnerable during this inflationary period, especially if their asset positions are also declining. And finally, just this kind of climate that we're in, market uncertainty, inflationary pressures, that we're experiencing now, that we may continue to experience, can make selling, high margin premium products more challenging in our clinics. So given the looming uncertainty, what can you do to prepare for what may lie ahead? The strategies I'm going to focus on today aren't unique to a downturn. They are things that a healthy practice should be doing continually, but they become even more important during a period of softness and may require a modified approach. The 5 strategies that we're going to focus on today are using business intelligence to make critical data-based decisions, marketing to drive new and existing patients into the practice, converting those opportunities into sales with an airtight patient pathway, ensuring that margins are healthy through your pricing strategy, and being able to save sales amidst tightening economic conditions by offering more options for patients. All right. Let's talk first about understanding your business. I'm going to start with this because this becomes the foundation for deciding what, if anything, to do on all these other areas that I'm going to get into in a minute. When you're experiencing 10, 15% growth year over year, it's easy to ignore these kinds of things. But, I think everyone would agree that we're not on the same economic footing that we have been over the last few years. So it's going to be more important than ever that you know what's happening in your business and can adjust quickly and confidently based on real data. In the context of a private practice, the main source of data is always going to be your OMS. So Blueprint, Counselor, Cycle, a handful of others, the systems that we're using for our day-to-day operations. So what is business intelligence and why is it important? You really need to have a correct and thorough understanding of your business in order to effectively manage and grow it. I like to think about it like a medical diagnosis. If a healthcare provider does not have a diagnosis for a patient's root problem, but is rather just treating symptoms, the patient may not improve as quickly or even at all if the underlying issue is not addressed. And the same thing's true in a hearing care practice. For example, if a practice decides to increase their marketing spend in response to sluggish sales, but the downturn was unrelated to marketing, then precious advertising dollars will have been wasted and the true issue remains undiscovered. But on the flip side, if we can get out in front of challenges with an early and accurate diagnosis, almost any problem can be rectified. So let's talk a little bit more about how we can use business intelligence specifically in the context of a hearing care practice. Office management systems, the ones I listed, provide a bunch of great tools to run your business. And if you're using them, the data is already there. You don't have to do anything extra. So business intelligence takes your data along with analytical tools and algorithms to combine it and present it in a way that allows you to achieve actionable insights that are actually going to move the needle in your practice when you take action on them. These types of tools have typically only been available to large corporations over the years because they're expensive, require a lot of resources to build and maintain, and even to kind of glean insights from. So for small businesses, this type of technology, just hasn't usually been available, especially in our industry. If you were able to build something yourself, even if that was in your skill set, that's probably not the best use of your time when you could be otherwise caring for patients, managing your staff, growing your practice. And if you were to try to get something off the shelf and not designed specifically for hearing care practices, it wouldn't actually be that useful. So that's why our team here at Pivot Hearing created My Vitals Pro, which we call MVP for short. We developed it based on over 35 years of running and growing private practices. So we know what actually matters. Your OMS is a must-have for running a successful practice, but without a powerful analytical tool, all the stuff in it's just data. MVP takes that data and turns it into actionable insights. So MVP is an interactive KPI dashboard and management tool. It features automatic nightly updates with sales and other leading non-financial indicators. So in real time, you can always understand exactly how your business is performing. It has powerful analytical tools that enable you to drill deep when you need to, providing critical business information at a glance so you can make the right decisions with confidence. It also helps you better understand your practice with the use of benchmarking, generated based off of similar size practices using millions of rows of anonymized data. We've also created proprietary algorithms that use multiple data sources to reveal your current market share, your penetration rate, and where the opportunities in your market are, so that you can use that for targeting and other growth plans. Like I mentioned, it integrates seamlessly with Blueprint, Counselor, Cycle, and TIMS, and it can be accessed securely from anywhere with an internet connection. Whether you're a single location owner or run a practice with dozens of locations and employees, MVP will give you the critical insights you need to make decisions for your business with confidence. So we don't have time to fully demo the tool today, but I wanted to show a couple of, just a few examples of the types of questions that MVP as a tool can help you answer. And if predictions about the economy and the market are correct, it's likely that you're going to have questions like these and others that you need to answer quickly and accurately in order to make the right decisions for your business. MVP and the team at Pivot Hearing can help you do that. So if anyone would be interested in a more in-depth demo, you can schedule that at pivothearing.com/MVP. Okay, let's move on to talk about marketing. If you hear that a recession's looming, it may be your first instinct to want to cut costs wherever possible. And sometimes that can be a good idea. However, a number of studies going back as far as a century have shown that maintaining or even increasing ad budgets during a weaker economy has advantages for businesses. Advertisers that maintained or even grew their ad spend increased sales and market share both during the recession and afterwards. I like the old adage that says, when times are good, you should advertise. When times are bad, you must advertise. There are several reasons to advertise during a slowdown. The noise level in any given product category drops when competitors cut back on their ad spend. So that leaves more room for your brand. It also allows you as a brand to project an image of stability, even during turbulent times. I mean, I think we all know and may remember from 2008 and 2020 that we had colleagues whose businesses simply didn't make it as soon as things got tough. So if your business not only makes it, but is able to project that kind of image of stability to the market, that's a very good thing. Also, the cost of advertising drops during a recession, which creates kind of a buyer's market for brands. And on the flip side, when marketers cut back on ad spend, your brand can lose share of mind with consumers, which potentially jeopardizes current and future sales. So all the hard work and money you've spent over the last few years getting your name out there, you don't want to lose all of that momentum. Your advertising messaging can change too. Some companies like to advertise promotions, discounts, things like that. during these times to try to appeal to different consumers and segments of the market. And then once the economy bounces back, regular pricing can come right back. If you're the type of business that does not like to advertise prices or promotions, you can focus on things like the value that your brand provides over competitive alternatives. So regardless of the exact method you take, and that's something we're certainly happy to talk with you about as far as your strategy, I would encourage you to maintain your marketing budget to the best of your ability because you're likely to see good returns as a result. What will be important is to ensure that your marketing is working hard for you. So that means focusing on things that are proven with high ROI and tend to be less risky. Here are our top recommendations. During COVID, we saw that practices relied more heavily on sales from existing patients than had been typical prior. As a benchmark, and this is something that we see in MVP, good mature practices tend to see a revenue split of about 50-50 between existing patients and new patients. During COVID, those ratios were a little bit more like 60-40 or even 70-30. Since nurturing your existing database is about the highest ROI marketing activity you can undertake, we strongly recommend maintaining or increasing those efforts through quarterly newsletters and twice annual database letters. We have creative for these efforts that's proven to work well to drive patient traffic into your clinic. Now, generating new patients, that's a little bit less predictable, even during good times. So it's really imperative that we be judicious about that ad spend and ensure it will deliver a meaningful return. Pivot Hearing's consumer seminar program relaunched in March this year after a 2-year hiatus related to COVID, and the results so far have been overwhelming. Nearly every of the dozens of events that we've planned have sold out, and the attendance rates have been near perfect, with extremely high appointment rates leading to lots of demos and, of course, sales. Our proven package makes it easy to pull off for any market, and we can help you with every step along the way. As practice owners, we also have a very ripe opportunity at hand to start or restart community and physician referral marketing. During COVID, these marketing efforts were all but dead. So if you had a high share of voice here before, it's time to build that back up. And if you didn't, it's likely that your competitors no longer do either. So the time is perfect to promote your brand through these extremely low-cost efforts that provide a steady stream of new patients for a long time to come. We can help with training, creating materials, and anything else you might need to make this happen. Okay, so you've done your marketing, you've gotten the patient to call your office, great. Now, how do you make sure that you turn that opportunity into a sale, especially when doing so might be more challenging than ever? This is where having a clear patient pathway comes in that moves a patient from that very first outreach to your clinic, whether it's a phone call, contact form submission on your website, et cetera, all the way through to the purchase of their hearing aids, all without any leaks along the funnel. We do that with our unique hearing aid test drive patient pathway. The hearing aid test drive can help some of the general market forces we've been dealing with over the past few years, like changing patient demographics, increases in big box stores and managed care, as well as address some of the new concerns that we're potentially confronting, such as consumer spending tightening and higher operating costs in our clinics. The hearing aid test drive helps to reinforce patient loyalty, generate more patient referrals, improve conversion rates, and deliver new patients through creative marketing concepts, all while simultaneously improving the financial position of your practice. At this point, a lot of practice owners will tell me, hey, a test drive, I do that. I do a 2-week trial. How's this different? With the hearing aid test drive, the patient is invested in the process with zero financial obligation. In this process, amplification happens basically immediately. The final decision on technology or product is made by the patient in close collaboration with the provider. It maximizes close rate because you become virtually impossible to compete with. The process itself builds trust and rapport with the patient. This process takes weeks, not hours or even days. And all that while you're building a relationship with the patient, which means lower return rates and higher referral rates. We also see increases in ASP as patients tend to self-select into higher levels of technology. At the same time, you disarm managed care, and you also get to stop selling in the traditional sense. There are a number of patient benefits to this way of doing business. So no pressure. It's hard for someone to say no to a totally free, risk-free hearing aid test drive. It removes the pressure from the patient, but it also removes the pressure from the provider. They don't feel like they have to make a sale right away. It sets up the interaction to be very easy for all parties and truly puts the patient's best interests at heart. In this process, the consumer is fit with amplification almost immediately after the hearing test. It's free for them to get started. All they have to do is agree to try the hearing aids. And that's a delight in itself. Very few patients who come into our clinic for the first time are expecting it to be that easy and low pressure. And it's easy for the practice too, if you're well stocked with demos, which is something we can help with. Patients can hardly believe that they're leaving with the hearing aids that first visit. No commitment, no deposit, not even a credit card imprint. By putting our trust in them, we find that they in turn put their trust back in us. It also empowers the patient and inspires confidence in their decision. Shared decision-making is a strong trend in healthcare, and this process does exactly that. The only strong recommendation we make is for amplification in general, and in working with our practice based on our differentiated and well-communicated value proposition. In a world where consumers are going to be tightening their belts, you can see that a process like this is going to lead to more demos, which means more trials and more sales. There are also a number of business benefits to doing things this way. The hearing aid test drive marketing creative is really unique and compelling for modern consumers. It's very different from what your competition is marketing, and it does lead to better results. Like I mentioned, most practices see an increase in ASP. When you instill trust in patients and give them time to make their decision, they tend to buy the hearing aid they actually need. They get the chance to hear what premiums really have to offer, and they often make that choice once they've had actual time in their daily life to experience the benefits and see that it's worth it. This is also great for cash flow. We help you use manufacturer demos to free up working capital. I think we can all agree that's going to be really important moving forward. It also leads to more reviews and more referrals. Patients delight in this method, and they will talk to friends, family online about how this is really a better approach. So again, during a softening of the economy, these kinds of business benefits are going to be more important than ever. We've developed a complete program around the test drive that includes training materials, patient-facing tools and placemats, everything you'd need to move patients successfully along this pathway. So we can share more details with anyone who's interested. All right, it's no secret that many of the manufacturers have raised their prices recently, some as much as 10% in just a few short months. It's also likely that some of your operating costs have gone up, such as payroll, especially if you've had to hire somebody new in the last year or so. There are certain benchmarks or best practices for what percentage these costs should be of your top line revenue. So in order to keep those in line, you're likely going to need to raise your prices if you haven't already. The good news is that consumers, they're expecting it, right? They're seeing prices go up everywhere. So they're not going to be shocked, if they even remember what they paid for their hearing aids from you a couple of years ago. That's another benefit for us, right? Is these aren't transactions that are generally happening every week. They're every few years. So what we're tending to see is very little pushback from patients to practices who have raised their prices already. So honing in on the ideal pricing strategy for your practice, it's not one size fits all. It's going to depend on a lot of things like the demographics of your market, the profiles of your customers, your competition, how price sensitive your specific customers are, where they come from, what your practice value proposition is, and how you communicate that. We have tools and processes that are well developed to help you think through all of that and come up with the right strategy for your practice and your market. And I'll just add, when business is booming, it's really easy to not pay attention to these kinds of details, even if we know we should. But given the current climate, this is actually the perfect time to take a good hard look at this and make sure that your pricing strategy and your business model are still tight. All right, so finally, as we mentioned earlier, you're probably going to need more options for price-sensitive consumers than ever before. Most healthy, mature practices compete in multiple segments of the market. Part of the hearing aid test drive and industry best practice is to fit premium technology as a first choice. It offers the best hearing results for the consumers and the greatest absolute profit. But even in non-recessionary periods, we need and want to be able to reach patients in other segments of the market. Pivot Hearing's unique leasing and financing programs allow more patients to afford premium technology or even to afford any hearing device at all. We also have our Access Hearing program, which is designed to help you compete with managed care, Costco, and any other low-cost competitors. And actually, officially, as of this week, we now have 5 of the leading hearing aid manufacturers who are participating in this program. It was 2 up until now. We now have 5 brands with excellent products in this program. So, it's really going to give you the edge that you need to not lose patients over price. which is something, we may be facing more of going forward. And all of it's nuanced. So that's where the hearing aid test drive patient pathway, the access hearing program, and just your pricing strategy and patient counseling in general, you have to kind of know in the sales process how to handle price related objections so that we maximize premium device sales, but also don't lose opportunities because of price. And that's something we can help you with as well. So before we jump into any questions that may have come in, I wanted to read our mission statement at Pivot Hearing, which is that we stand with private practices because we believe they provide the best patient care. And it's our vision to successfully fortify those practices to thrive in their local markets. We develop impactful, forward-thinking, real-world tools to help private practices compete in good times and in bad. And we don't just bring ideas, we also deliver lightning fast execution so your practice can stay one step ahead. We offer practice development services in 3 major categories. Offense, which are the ways we help you acquire new patients. Defense, the ways we help you nurture and engage existing patients, as well as fortify your practice against any and all competitive threats. And then finally, coaching. This is all of the other practice management support we deliver to you and your team. You can visit pivothearing.com to learn more about any of our services. And there's also a number of ways you can get in touch with us there, chat, schedule a meeting, fill out our form, et cetera. So thanks everyone for attending. Will, I don't know if we have any questions. I'm happy to answer any if we do.
Absolutely, yeah. Great job, Chelsea. We do have a couple of questions here that have come in, so feel free to add some more here if there's anything you'd like to ask. I have got a few chats on the side, so thanks for those. One question here is, are the new manufacturers and prices on the site for the Access Hearing program already? So I think the question is, are those live on the Pivot Hearing portal for members currently?
That's a great question. Yep. So those are going to be announced either later this week or first thing next week. So they are not yet on the portal. This is probably a question from an existing Pivot Hearing member, I presume, because all of our price lists live on the Pivot Hearing member portal. What I can say for sure is that all of the pricing is the same across all brands. So for those who aren't familiar with the Access Hearing program, for each brand that participates, so it was 2, it's now 5. There's a premium product or sets of products and advanced products. The pricing's the same across all brands for premium and all brands for advanced level technology. And that's going to be true with the new manufacturers as well. So we will be announcing the exact manufacturers and products either later this week or first thing next week, but they're available for order as soon as we do. And I think everyone's gonna be really excited about those. Gives you lots of good options. Oh, one other thing I'll throw in is we're particularly excited about this because we are such strong believers in the hearing aid test drive. Now, does every patient need to test drive premium and advanced technology from 5 different hearing aid manufacturers? Of course not. But generally speaking, there's probably going to be 2 or 3 of these manufacturers that you really love fitting their products and are super comfortable with. And so having so many options within the program will allow you to offer the test drive within the Access Hearing program if that's something you so choose.
Okay, I got a chat. It's more of a suggestion than a question, but I think it's worth reading here. So would like another training focus on the leasing program specifically. Okay. So something to put in our notes there.
Yes,
so.
Thank you. Yeah, we'd be happy to do that. And in the meantime, anyone who's interested in learning more about that, just go to pivothearing.com. There's a way you can schedule a meeting just right online, just whatever works for you. So we'd be happy to do that one-on-one, but sure, we've written lots of articles and done presentations on leasing in the past. So we'd be happy to bring that back.
Yeah, and I just think that the leasing program in an inflationary environment is particularly intriguing because you're kind of locking in a payment monthly amount based off of kind of today's prices. And of course, if things continue on this trend, that, the back half of that lease might seem fairly affordable if the power of the dollar continues to decline relative to goods and services. So, so here's a question: pricing packages to work with Pivot. So I assume that's the question of whether there's a cost to work with Pivot, perhaps.
Sure, I'm happy to answer that. So yeah, there's no cost to work with Pivot Hearing. So you get the value of all of these services that you see here simply by purchasing your hearing devices through us, the ones that you'd be purchasing anyway, and more of them as a result of all the great work we'll do with you in your practice. So we have great competitive pricing from all of the manufacturers. We work with everybody. So yeah, the only costs for Pivot are, hard costs. So if we decide we're going to do a consumer seminar and there's a postcard mailing, you pay for the printing and the postage, but we'll build you the presentation, we'll train you to do the public speaking, we'll design the marketing, we'll, walk you through the process, everything like that. So yeah, generally speaking, no cost to work with us, great hearing aid pricing, and you just pay for any hard costs that are mutually agreed upon.
Okay, great. Here's one more question. So is there a way to gauge who gets the test drive and who goes straight to a sale? We don't want to delay people who are ready to go ahead with hearing aids. Maybe a question on the intake or scale, question mark. So I think that's, I think I could probably tackle that one. Yeah, I think that there probably are some instances where it might make sense to kind of forego the test drive process for somebody who's really, really ready and knows what they want and what they need. And maybe there's some other extenuating circumstances, difficulty getting into the office or something like that. So I think with relatively rare exception, there is a case to be made for that. But I do think that like for the vast majority of patients, at least giving them a call it a 1 week period between their initial appointment and the sale to do that, shorter version of a hearing aid test drive. I think that's probably going to be good in most cases for all sorts of different reasons. One will be lower return rates and just the ability to kind of establish rapport and build trust with that patient by giving them the week to try them in their own environment to make sure they're really certain. So hope that answers the question reasonably well.
I mean, I've heard another person on our team say before who he sees patients part-time and works for Pivot Hearing as well, that there's kind of nothing more powerful than when someone is ready to buy and getting their checkbook out and you say, hang on one sec, I want you to wear these at home, or I want you to try one more thing. And I will say that we see that come through in the reviews too. I just think kind of like Will mentioned, the credibility that it gives your organization is pretty amazing. So, yeah.
Here's another question. Do you suggest holding back on test drive when third party is involved or required by patient's insurance? So I think I can tackle that one. I think that the test drive patient pathway is a key differentiator when you look at your private pay business versus your third party business. I think that's one of the additional, that's a big value add on the private pay side of things that will, in most cases justify a higher purchase price for the patient because they're getting a totally different experience generally. So I think with third party, you follow you go by the letter of the law in terms of your contract, what services are required or available to patients. But no, I mean, just logistically, it's going to be extremely challenging to try and facilitate a test drive, if you will, with a third party patient, because, of course, you're not the one who's selling the hearing aid. So no, I would clearly, private pay patients are going to go through this one particular pathway, and then the third party is going to be contract for contract based on what you're required to do. Okay, so unless anybody else has questions, that answers all of them that are in here. Give it another couple minutes or seconds rather. See if any other ones come in. Okay, great. All right. Well, I think that that is about it. Thank you everybody for taking the time to join our presentation today. If you'd like to learn more about Pivot, please go to pivothearing.com. From there, you can schedule a meeting directly with us or get in touch with us a variety of different ways. And we'd love to hear from all of you. So thanks again and enjoy the rest of your day.
Take care.